Hello, all you folks out there in YouTube land. It's been a couple of weeks since I've had the time to sit down and actually work through enough of a game to write a reasonable review of it, and for that, I apologize. For the wit that sent me a copy of this game, I keep my part of the bargain and ask that you never, ever send me a game this notoriously bad again. Please. It was thoroughly hyped during production, a rather deceptive trailer made from it, and then blasted in the gaming media after its release. For once, I find myself completely in agreement. This game was poor on a number of levels, not the least being the rather arbitrary nature of a lot of the ridiculousness that was supposed to be a jump scare. Having already played Alien Isolation, I can't help but compare this game with it, with this one being the worst single thing made for the entire franchise. Yes, I'd rather sit through 20 consecutive showings of Alien 3 than be subjected to this game for another moment. I'd almost rather be forced to play through Gone Home again. It's not quite Depression Quest levels of bad, because there's at least no question that it's a game, but it's a very near thing. It really leads me to believe that Sega had little part in the making of this game, as it contends, and that Gearbox is primarily responsible for this nearly 10 GB clusterfuck. They were the developer, and it doesn't matter how much polish you put on it at this point, it'll still be a soggy shit sandwich of such epic proportions that it would feed the entire planet we live on for decades. The buggy eye for the aliens is the most cited problem the game has, and that's probably of the least of my complaints. The entire scenario was contrived to the point of ridiculousness from the word go. The Sulaco returning to LV-426 rather than going home was only the beginning, however. A pile of aliens were to be expected on board, but what I found there went far beyond the pale. That they saved Corporal Hicks in the process of retconning the end of the second film was egregious enough, but that Hadley's Hope showed no signs of damage from the nuclear blast that ripped through it at the end of the 1986 film was inexcusable. Then we have several different sorts of aliens, where we've never seen more than a handful in the entire series, and most of those from the fourth film was adaptations to various environments. Nothing in any film that involved them was ever noted, including Prometheus and the Aliens vs. Predator films. Nothing like the hulking brutes that acted like berserk cows, for example. The gatherer xenomorphs and the queens were the ones we'd seen most often, and the aquatic version from Resurrection. I can live with that. The Predator version made some sense as well, in the AVP movies. For the fourth film, they take on some of the characteristics of the host, and if you got the right type of host, you would get a different type of creature. Without all that, you spent the bulk of the game fighting other humans, with only a small handful of levels where the aliens are even present. They did the same thing in Isolation with the Working Joes, but that was a critter that was reasonable for the scenario, and they were well handled. Having to beat off wave after wave of the stupidest corporate forces ever to wander across my sights was an exercise in boredom and frustration both. It takes a special sort of gift to be able to do that, and not in a nice way. I have no idea what they thought they were going to accomplish this way, but it made a game that was already too long by several hours just that much longer, and I didn't appreciate it much. In Isolation, you had cases where instant kills were the order of the day, and you had to take care about saving as well as entering into the quick-time events that were present throughout. Here, they jump out at you before you have time to bring your weapon into play, and the events are timed in such a way that if you don't know they're coming you're going to get creamed before you can say, boo. The first encounter between our thin as monofilament cardboard protagonist, Winters, and the xenomorphs is very much like that. He backs way off, and before he can bring his weapon to bear, you're in press X to not die mode. If you don't get on it quickly enough, you're dead, and back to the last checkpoint, rather a ways from your previous position. Even the controls on the Xbox 360 controller are beyond salvaging, because switching weapons quickly to whatever it was you actually wanted is a nightmare. I sat there playing with the directional pad for several minutes before I finally got my assault rifle back, only to have it flash away again with a stray gesture in that general direction. You can remap the controls, but that does no more good than the standard soldier controls. In all of that garbage, there was one shining moment that made me sit up and take notice. I was in the airlock on my first play session prior to boarding the Sulaco, and looking for the button to open the damn door when I hit the right trigger, and died in the back blast from my weapon discharging. Later, I managed to do the same thing with the grenade launcher on the rifle while trying to work out how to activate an action node. I can be forgiven for not realizing that the node I was trying to activate wasn't actually a node, but the corpse of a marine hanging uselessly from the wall. Several minutes of epithets and a quickish run back through later, and I was eaten by Gru, in the form of a failed QuickTime event. With all the bugs even after a year of patches, the story a non-starter, and the horror of trying to play, this game is a broken mess that, like Depression Quest, is better uninstalled and left in a ditch for dead. Kage can play it if he wants to, but I won't be. I have better things to do. Like, say, burn out my nose hairs with battery acid. Or carve my own ovaries out with a spoon. Maybe I could inject white phosphorus into my carotid artery. Or work 100 hours a week as a telemarketer. Any of those would be preferable to this raging clusterfuck that they dare charge money for. They should have been paying us to take it. I shouldn't have to give it a rating at this point, as I think I've made my opinion on the matter very clear, but if you just can't go without one, I'll give it 1.1 out of a possible 10. It's better than Depression Quest, but only just. If Alien Isolation was a shining example of how games can be fun, then this pile of fretted goat droppings is its antithesis. Although I think I may have just insulted goat feces by saying that. Join me in putting this thing down before it goes on sale again, and let's make games fun again.